thought I had it all under control. A husband who trusted me, a child who adored me, a secret I told myself would stay quiet. But then, one day my son came home early from school, and he saw a man, the man I was never supposed to let in. That night, he looked his father in the eyes and said, "Why was there a man here when you weren't home?" And everything shattered. This is my confession. You don't plan to ruin your life over coffee. It always starts small. Too small to feel dangerous. Too innocent to call it what it really is. I thought I was just flirting. Mark and I had been married for 16 years. We weren't broken. We weren't fighting. But we weren't really us anymore either. We shared space, bills, responsibilities. We shared a child, a mortgage, a quiet rhythm of survival that never felt quite like love, but wasn't unhappy enough to leave. We used to be passionate, funny, spontaneous. Now he kissed me out of habit, asked how my day was while reading emails. He was tired all the time. Work stressed him out. I understood. But sometimes understanding starts to feel like disappearing. Greg was unexpected. He wasn't even someone I was close to. We'd worked at the same company years ago. He was in marketing, sharp, fast-talking, the kind of man who made you feel like you were the only one in the room, even if you weren't. He messaged me on LinkedIn, of all places. Just a, "Hey, long time no see" kind of thing. Casual, I answered. We exchanged a few back and forths, caught up, laughed about our old boss. I didn't think much of it. Then he asked if I wanted to grab lunch sometime. I hesitated, but I said yes. The first lunch was harmless. We talked about work, kids, divorce. His, not mine. He'd recently split from his wife of 12 years. Turns out marrying someone you barely know at 25 isn't a great long-term plan, he joked. I laughed, nodded, said something like, "Marriage is work." He asked if I was happy. I said yes. He tilted his head. That sounded like a question. I changed the subject. The second lunch felt different. He leaned in more, complimented my earrings, told me I didn't look a day over 35, said my husband must be one lucky guy. I brushed it off, smiled, flattered, nervous. When I got home, I didn't tell Mark I'd seen Greg again. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I wasn't sure it had been entirely right either. That silence was the first crack. I started dressing a little differently on the days I knew I'd see Greg. Nothing drastic, just little things. Lipstick, a tighter blouse, perfume I hadn't worn in months. Mark didn't notice. That hurt more than it should have. Ethan, our son, was 11. Quiet, smart, observant in ways that made me uncomfortable sometimes. He had Mark's eyes and my timing. Careful, thoughtful, always watching. He was at school most days, and Mark was usually at the job site or his office. I worked from home 2 days a week, freedom I used to love. Now it felt like space I didn't know what to do with. Greg started texting more. Compliments. Jokes. "What would you be doing if I were there?" Kind of texts. I should have stopped it. I didn't. Instead, I answered. And I started imagining things I hadn't let myself feel in years. One morning, Mark left early to meet a contractor. Ethan had just gotten on the bus. I was making coffee when Greg texted, "Driving past your place, tempted to knock." I wrote back, "You wouldn't." "Try me." I stared at the phone for a long time, and then I wrote something I still regret. "I have 90 minutes. I told myself he wouldn't actually come. But 15 minutes later, I heard the knock. When I opened the door, Greg stood there, casual, smug, like this was just a game we'd both agreed to play. He walked in like he'd done it before, and I didn't stop him. We didn't do anything that first day. We talked. Stood too close. He touched my hair once, gently. I told him he should go. He did. But the air in the house was different after that. Charged. Wrong. And I was already thinking about when I'd let him come back. I didn't tell Mark. Of course not. But I also didn't feel guilty. Not really. Because nothing happened. At least that's what I told myself. But the truth is, it had already started. And I wasn't in control of it anymore. Greg didn't wait long to come back. The second time he came over, he brought coffee. Same kind I liked. Remembered from when we used to share a break room a decade ago. Still take it with cinnamon? He asked, holding out the cup. I nodded, smiled. Let him in. He didn't sit on the couch this time. He leaned against the kitchen counter, close. Close enough that I could smell his cologne. Not too much, just enough. Clean, masculine, expensive. We talked, stupid, meaningless things. Then quiet things. Then closer things. He made a joke about how he used to have a crush on me back then. I made a joke back. Said he was probably just bored at work. But we both knew it wasn't just joking anymore. That week, we met for lunch again. Then again the next. By the fourth time, I stopped pretending I wasn't looking forward to it. It wasn't physical. Not yet. But it was everything emotional. The little looks, the brushes of hands, the conversations that lingered too long. Greg started texting late at night. I responded. Sometimes when I was lying next to Mark, sometimes when I wasn't. I could feel the split inside me growing. There was the version of me who folded Ethan's clothes and helped with math homework. The wife who packed lunches and remembered to refill prescriptions. The woman who sat across from her husband every night and smiled when he asked, "Everything good?" And then there was her, the one who checked her phone for texts that shouldn't come, who thought about another man's hands, who wanted more than quiet dinners and polite kisses and routine. I hated her. And I couldn't stop being her. The kiss happened on a Wednesday. It was raining. Greg texted around noon. Storm's brutal. Need coffee? Yours? I didn't say yes. I just sent the address. He came in soaked, his hair a little messy, shirt clinging in all the right ways. He took off his jacket, draped it on the chair. Our eyes met. And we didn't even try to pretend. He stepped closer, and I let him. His lips were warm, confident, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. We kissed like we were stealing air. And in a way, we were. I pulled back first, heart pounding, breath shaky. I can't, I whispered. Greg nodded. I know. But he didn't leave. Not right away. That night, Mark asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. He offered to rub my shoulders. I said no. Too quick. He didn't push. That was the thing about Mark. He never pushed. He assumed silence meant respect. That privacy was trust. And in any normal world, it would have been. But I was living a double life. And he didn't even see the edges. Ethan had been quieter lately. I assumed it was school. He was 11, that in-between age where boys don't want to talk but still need everything. He didn't ask why I'd been on my phone so much. Didn't ask why I'd stopped joining Mark at the house for after-school projects. Didn't ask anything, but he was watching. I just didn't know it yet. Greg and I got bolder after that kiss. He came over twice more in the next week. Once when Ethan was at school and Mark was working late. Once when I said I needed to reset the internet router during work hours. We never had sex. But that almost made it worse. The restraint, the tension, the knowing what we both wanted. And still pretending we didn't. Greg asked me once, "Do you love him?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was too complicated to fit in a sentence. I loved what Mark gave me. Security, stability, peace. But I didn't feel alive with him anymore. Greg made me feel wanted. and I didn't realize how long it had been since I'd felt that. The next time Greg asked to come over, I said yes without checking the time, without double checking Ethan's school schedule, without thinking. That was my mistake. Because the next time he came through my door, so did Ethan. It was supposed to be safe. That day, everything was lined up perfectly. Ethan had a full schedule. He'd be at school until 3, maybe later if he stayed for aftercare. Mark was working late, out at a job site north of the city. I checked twice. Greg texted at 11:24 a.m. Thinking about you. Still raining. Want company? And I said yes. He arrived just after noon. Same rhythm as before. Quick knock, soft steps, casual smile like he belonged there. I let him in without thinking, my body already buzzing. We didn't even sit this time. He kissed me against the hallway wall, his hand cupping the back of my neck like it was his right. And I let him. God help me. I let him. For a moment, the guilt disappeared. The world shrunk down to skin, breath, the edge of something that felt like freedom. Then I heard it. The door. Front door. Keys. A shuffle. A pause. Then a voice. Mom? Time froze. Greg's hands dropped from my waist. I shoved him back, heart in my throat. I stepped into the hallway, legs shaking. Ethan stood there, backpack still on, sneakers wet, eyes wide. It felt like a car crash. Not loud, but everything stopped moving. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. What are you doing home? He looked confused. Mrs. Benson canceled math club. Her kid's sick. He blinked at me, then looked past me, into the kitchen where Greg was now standing, frozen like a deer in headlights. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Who's that? My stomach flipped. I couldn't speak. Greg stepped forward. Hey, bud. I'm Greg. Just a friend of your mom's. Ethan looked at me, then at Gregorian, then back at me. He didn't say anything, just nodded once, then walked upstairs. Slow, heavy. Greg left 30 seconds later. No kiss, no joke. No, see you later. Just a mumbled, I should go. And then he was gone. And I was alone in the living room, the clock ticking louder than it had in years. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for a long time, unsure if I should go up. I wanted to believe Ethan hadn't seen anything, that he'd bought the friend lie, that he didn't understand. But I knew better. Children see everything, especially when you're trying to hide. That night, Ethan didn't come down for dinner. I told Mark he wasn't feeling well. He didn't question it. I sat across from my husband and tried to chew. I couldn't taste a thing. Mark talked about the flooring, how the shipment was delayed, how he might need to switch suppliers. I nodded at all the right moments, made the right sounds. And every second, all I could hear was Ethan's voice in my head. Who's that? Later, after Mark went to bed, I knocked softly on Ethan's door. Hey, baby, I said, stepping inside. He was sitting on his bed, reading, or pretending to. You okay? I asked. He nodded. Fine. You came home early today. That was surprising. He looked at me, calm, too calm for 11. Why was there a man here? My throat tightened. He's just a friend, I said. Silence. He looked like more than a friend. I sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to choose words that didn't exist. Sometimes adults have complicated friendships. He said nothing. I reached for his hand. He pulled away. I won't tell Dad, he said softly. And that broke me more than if he had screamed, because it wasn't anger. It was disappointment. Worse, it was protection. My child was protecting me from the truth, because deep down he knew what I had done, and he already understood what it could cost. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there beside Mark, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing, staring at the ceiling like it could answer a question I didn't know how to ask. I kept thinking, it's contained. Ethan won't say anything. He said he wouldn't, but silence doesn't mean safety. Silence can be a storm winding up. The next morning, everything felt wrong. Ethan avoided my eyes at breakfast, didn't touch his cereal. He sat stiffly, too quiet, as Mark tried to talk to him about a movie they'd planned to watch that weekend. "You okay, bud?" Mark asked, brow furrowing. Ethan nodded. "Fine." But Mark was looking at me when he said it. Not suspicious, just curious. Like maybe he was sensing something but couldn't quite put his finger on it. I pretended to scroll my phone. I couldn't eat either. Greg didn't text that day. I think we both knew the line had been crossed. Not between us. That had already happened. It was the line between a private mistake and a public one. And now it wasn't just ours anymore. The moment everything collapsed came 2 nights later. Ethan was brushing his teeth. I was cleaning up dinner. Mark was packing up tools for another long day at the renovation site. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan appeared in the doorway. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his father. "Dad," he said, "why did Mom have a man over when you were gone?" Mark turned slowly like he hadn't heard the words right. "What?" Ethan shrugged. "I got home early the other day. There was a man in the kitchen. Mom said he was a friend, but—" Mark stood frozen, eyes flicking to me. I dropped the sponge in the sink. My heart exploded in my chest. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "Michelle?" Mark's voice was low, steady, like he was asking me what time dinner was, not whether I'd betrayed everything we'd built together. I tried to smile. I failed. "Greg is just an old friend. We had coffee, that's all." Mark blinked. "Here?" I swallowed. "Yes, just here. We talked." Ethan said nothing. He was already gone, upstairs, quiet, probably with headphones in and the door locked, because he'd done his part. He'd told the truth. Now it was my turn. Mark set the tool bag down, slowly. "You've been acting strange," he said. I noticed. The phone. The way you stopped asking about the house. How you flinch when I touch you. "Mark?" "How long?" I closed my eyes. There's nothing to say. "How long?" His voice didn't rise. That made it worse. 2 months, I whispered. His face cracked in half. He looked like he was trying to swallow something that didn't want to be swallowed. "Did you sleep with him?" I shook my head too fast. Number just kissing, talking. It got out of hand. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. And maybe he didn't. "I was building you a home," he said. "Every single day, thinking about what you'd want, where the light would fall, what color you said you liked on the walls." "I know. I did it for you." "I know. You let another man stand in the kitchen I was designing for us." That's when I started to cry. But it was too late for tears. Mark didn't yell. Didn't slam a door. Didn't ask for reasons. He packed a bag that night. Just one. He kissed Ethan on the head. He didn't touch me. When he walked out the front door, I followed him to the porch. "Where will you go?" He didn't answer. He just turned, looked me in the eyes, and said, "You should have lied better. Or not at all." Then he got in the truck, and he left. Inside, the house felt too quiet. Ethan didn't come downstairs. I stood alone in the kitchen. The one I had ruined. The one he had built for me. The silence after he left was worse than any scream. Mark didn't block my number. He didn't send a single text. He didn't call, not even to ask about Ethan. He just vanished. Moved himself out of the life we'd built so quietly, it felt like he'd been planning it long before our son said those words. And maybe he had. Maybe part of him always knew. I tried to go on with the day-to-day, making Ethan's lunch, checking school emails, doing laundry. But every time I walked into the kitchen, I saw the ghost of that night. Mark's tool bag by the door. The spot on the floor where I'd dropped the sponge. The look in his eyes when I said, "It's not what you think." Because it was. And I think he knew the moment Ethan spoke before I even opened my mouth. Greg tried to contact me. The day after it all fell apart, he sent a message. "I heard a rumor I caused a storm. Want to talk?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I already knew what that road looked like. And it didn't end in peace. It ended in more damage. That Friday, I called Mark. Straight to voicemail. I texted. "Can we talk?" Nothing. So I called again. He finally picked up. The line was quiet at first. Then he said, "Don't. Please don't. I just want to explain." "I don't need you to." Mark Dash. "Michelle." His voice broke. "There's nothing you can say that makes it undone." I didn't sleep with him. He laughed. Not a kind laugh. A cold one. "You think that's the line?" I didn't respond. "Do you know what our son saw? Do you know what kind of memory you just gave him?" That hit harder than anything else. Because I did. And it was already too late to take it back. I found a therapist. Not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I needed someone to say out loud what I had become. A liar. A wife who turned away instead of reaching for her husband. A mother whose son had to be the one to hold up a mirror. Ethan stayed quiet. Too quiet. For days, he barely spoke to me beyond what was necessary. Then one night, he came into the kitchen and stood there, staring. I was sitting at the island, picking at leftover pasta. "Do you love Dad?" he asked. I looked at him, heart cracking open. "Of course I do." He paused. "Then why'd you let that guy kiss you?" I swallowed the ache in my throat. I made a mistake. A big one. He nodded. "Are you gonna do it again?" "No," I whispered. "Never again." He didn't say anything else. He just turned and walked upstairs. But at least he'd asked. At least he was still talking. Mark eventually came to see Ethan, picked him up on a Sunday, took him out for the day. Didn't come in, didn't speak to me. Ethan came back with a small smile, said nothing specific, just that it was okay. When he went to bed that night, I stood in his doorway and watched him breathe. And I realized I hadn't lost just a husband. I'd lost a version of myself I might never get back. You think cheating is just a secret between two people? But it's not. It's a fire that finds every corner of your life. It burns where you don't expect it. It hurts people who never signed up to be collateral. And when the flames die down, you're the one left standing in the smoke, trying to remember what parts of you used to be whole. Mark hasn't moved back home. It's been 3 months. His clothes are gone. His toothbrush. The sweatshirt I used to steal when I felt cold even though we had a dozen blankets. All of it. Gone. But his absence isn't what haunts me. It's the way he left pieces of himself behind. The shelves he built with his own hands. The soft closed drawers he installed just for me. The kitchen faucet he picked because he remembered I hated fingerprints on chrome. Everywhere I look, he's here. But he's not. Ethan and I exist now in this quiet, careful truce. He wakes up, eats, goes to school, does his homework. We don't talk about that day. We don't talk about Greg, or Mark, or anything real. He doesn't ask questions anymore. And somehow that hurts even more than when he did. It's like he already decided who I am, and he's not interested in knowing anything else. I lost something in his eyes that afternoon, something I don't think I'll ever get back. Not respect, exactly. Trust. And that's worse. The last time I saw Greg was the following week. He showed up at the cafe where we used to meet, sat at a table across from mine, didn't smile, just looked at me with that same damn expression, part charm, part regret, part ego. I didn't go over. I paid for my drink and walked out. Because in the end, Greg wasn't the mistake. I was. I opened the door. I ignored the warning signs. I betrayed the man who built me a home, and the child who looked to me as his safe place. I did that. No one else. Sometimes I catch myself still reaching for my phone, wanting to text Mark, not to ask him to come back, just to tell him I'm sorry. Again. And again. But I don't. Because I know what it would sound like to him now. Noise. Not truth. Not change. Just guilt echoing into the void. The other night, Ethan was watching a movie in the living room. I sat beside him and asked if I could join. He shrugged. Didn't say yes, didn't say no. Halfway through, he leaned his head against my shoulder. Just for a second. But it was something. And I cried in the dark without making a sound. People love to say, a mistake doesn't define you. But I don't think that's true. Because some mistakes rewrite the entire story. You can still live in the same house, eat at the same table, sleep in the same bed, but something in the walls remembers. And when the lights are off and no one's watching, you remember too. Sometimes I look at the clock around 6:30 p.m. and imagine Mark pulling into the driveway like he used to. I imagine Ethan running to the door. I imagine dinner, a conversation, laughter that doesn't feel forced. Then the image fades, and I'm left with 2 chairs and 1 plate. I don't know if Mark will ever forgive me. I don't know if Ethan will either. I don't know if I'll ever look in the mirror and see someone I respect again. But I know this. That one moment, that one reckless, selfish decision, didn't just cost me my marriage. It cost me who I was inside it. Because when your child looks at you and sees a stranger, when your husband walks away, without raising his voice, without demanding an explanation, because the truth is already written in your silence, you don't get to pretend it was just a kiss. You don't get to say, it didn't go that far. You don't get to be the victim. In a story you chose to write,